Nebraska Secretary of State Robert B. Evnen signed a non-binding Memorandum of Understanding (MOU) with Kenya's Principal Secretary for Diaspora Affairs, Rosaline Njogu, during a taxpayer-funded trade mission to Nairobi. This agreement, purportedly fostering student exchanges, apprenticeships, and lawful labor mobility, explicitly aims to bring Kenyan truck drivers to Nebraska to address a supposed shortage in the trucking industry, despite the availability of thousands of qualified local drivers. Governor Jim Pillen publicly distanced himself from the MOU, stating it was not state policy, yet Evnen's unilateral action, without gubernatorial or interagency approval, raises serious questions about misuse of authority and funds. This initiative, located 8,000 miles from Lincoln to Nairobi, is not merely a policy misstep. It represents a profound breach of public trust, driven by corporate interests and globalist agendas that threaten Nebraska's economic and cultural integrity. The MOU's implications extend far beyond bureaucratic error, reflecting a deeper pattern of exploitation orchestrated by Nebraska's political and corporate elite. These leaders, including Evnen, former Governor Pete Ricketts, Governor Jim Pillen, Congressman Don Bacon, and influential figures like Warren Buffett, appear complicit in a system that prioritizes cheap foreign labor over local workers, undermining the state's predominantly white, working-class communities. While Pillen has disavowed this specific MOU, his broader tolerance of undocumented labor in his agricultural enterprises suggests selective opposition, casting doubt on his commitment to Nebraska's workforce. The MOU's focus on importing Kenyan drivers, unfamiliar with Nebraska's roads, regulations, and language, threatens to suppress wages by 30 to 50%, mirroring historical patterns of labor importation from Mexico and other regions, all under the guise of economic necessity. This is not progress. It is a calculated strategy to enrich corporate entities like Tyson Foods, JBS, and potentially Werner Enterprises, who profit from low-wage workers while local communities bear the social and economic costs. The disruptions caused by such immigration policies are starkly evident in Nebraska's small towns. Places like Lexington, now home to an estimated 1,500 Somali immigrants, roughly 15% of its population, have faced significant strain due to corporate-driven labor importation. Schools in Lexington and Grand Island are overwhelmed, with up to 10% of students being African-born, many requiring extensive English language support, diverting resources from local students and lowering educational standards. Community cohesion has frayed, with cultural clashes, such as zoning disputes over mosques and demands for halal accommodations, disrupting the traditional fabric of these towns. Public safety has also suffered, with federal raids in Omaha uncovering human trafficking networks exploiting African immigrants, and immigration and customs enforcement operations apprehending violent offenders, including MS 13 affiliates within migrant communities. Health systems face additional burdens, with reports of tuberculosis outbreaks and mental health crises among refugees, stretching Nebraska's limited medical resources. The importation of foreign drivers poses specific risks on Nebraska's highways. Kenya's traffic fatality rate of 28.2 per 100,000 far exceeds Nebraska's, and recent incidents, such as a fatal crash caused by an untrained Indian immigrant truck driver in Florida in August 2025, highlight the dangers of inadequately prepared foreign operators. These drivers, unfamiliar with U.S. traffic laws and road conditions, increase the likelihood of accidents, endangering Nebraskans. The MOU's push for Kenyan truck drivers, potentially military-age men with minimal training, ignores these realities, prioritizing corporate cost-cutting over public safety and local employment. This scheme is not an isolated act, but part of a broader corporate-driven agenda that exploits Nebraska's resources for profit. Evnen, a former labor attorney with ties to corporate interests at Woods and Aitken LLP, exemplifies the archetype of a compromised official swayed by financial schemes that enrich elites while impoverishing communities. His actions, alongside those of Ricketts, Pillen, Bacon, and Buffett, reflect a network of influence where state agencies and legislators facilitate labor importation under the pretext of economic growth. These schemes, often tied to federal subsidies and investment portfolios, exploit workers, sometimes at near-slave wages, while displacing Nebraskans and eroding the state's white, pioneer heritage, which values self-reliance and community cohesion. The legal and ethical violations are manifold. The MOU's funding, drawn from taxpayer resources without proper authorization, violates Nebraska Revised Statute 84-306, constituting potential felony theft by deception, punishable by up to 20 years in prison. Evnen's failure to recuse himself, given his corporate ties, breaches Nebraska Revised Statute 49-1493, risking charges of bribery under 18 United States Code 666. The facilitation of unvetted migration raises concerns of sedition under Nebraska Constitution Article 1, Section 14, and potential racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations act violations if corporate collusion is proven. Evnen's role in promoting harmful COVID-19 protocols, lockdowns, masks, and vaccines, now discredited by studies like the Cochrane collaboration, further implicates him in reckless endangerment, Nebraska Revised Statute 28-904, and possible wire fraud, 18 United States Code 1343, for misrepresenting efficacy with federal funds. Nebraskans, particularly those of white heritage who form the state's cultural backbone, overwhelmingly reject this influx. The call for a Back to Africa initiative reflects a broader desire to preserve local identity and economic stability, advocating for the repatriation of African immigrants, whether refugees or economic migrants, to their homelands, as exemplified by historical efforts like Marcus Garvey's movement and modern Ghanaian repatriation programs. This sentiment extends to holding accountable those responsible for these policies. Evnen, Ricketts, Pillen, Bacon, Buffett, and complicit legislators and agencies are seen as enablers of a corporate globalist agenda that betrays Nebraska's sovereignty. Proposals for their figurative banishment, alongside repatriated immigrants, underscore the depth of public frustration, demanding not just removal but a symbolic reckoning for their role in undermining the state. In conclusion, the Nebraska-Kenya MOU is a stark emblem of a state government captured by corporate interests, willing to sacrifice its people for profit and globalist ideals. The importation of Kenyan truck drivers, facilitated by Evnen's reckless leadership, threatens economic stability, public safety, and cultural integrity, while towns like Lexington bear the scars of prior waves of immigration. This is not mere incompetence. It is a deliberate betrayal, orchestrated by a cadre of elites who cloak their schemes in economic rhetoric while dismantling Nebraska's heritage. The path forward requires immediate action, legislative impeachment, criminal investigations, and public mobilization to expel these policies and their architects. Only through resolute accountability can Nebraska reclaim its sovereignty and restore the trust of its citizens, ensuring a future that honors its proud, self-reliant legacy.